take over.
Orengo had a lot of blue and then said, "Oh yeah, I have one white card," and I was like, "I have all white
You
cards."
have really good white cards.
Yes. So again, the Mycosynth Gardens, amazing, absolutely amazing. We already talked about it. But my number one card I really like is Skrelv, the Defector Might. He's 1 mana, 1/1 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might. Toxic 1, so whenever he deals damage, that player also, like, whenever he deals damage to a player, it also gets a point. They also get a points counter. He can't block like all other mites, and you can pay a Phyrexian mana or like a Phyrexian white mana and tap him, and then choose a color. Another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. I really like this. This is basically Giver of Runes. It's not Mother of Runes, it's Giver of Runes. The reason I like this better than Giver of Runes, although Giver of Runes is probably better in some occasions, is that this particularly is an artifact. And Osgir cares about artifacts, and Osgir being my favorite deck, I was really excited to see. I basically have a Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes type effect in an artifact. So this is replacing my Giver of Runes. If you have played against this type of effect in mono white, this is gonna be, you play this on turn 1, you play an effective threat on turn 2, and from then onwards, it's gonna be very hard to remove
That is true.
that other threat unless you remove Skrelv first.
Yeah, I heard last episode, Chris was like, "Oh look, I want to make a Might Phyrexian Might commander."
Yep, and he'd be your commander.
Yes.
The next card would be Mondrak Glory Dominus. 2 white for a 4/4. He's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Horror. This is one of the cycles. These are technically what would be the Phyrexian gods. His ability is, if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many tokens are created instead. I'm sad that he's not an artifact, but I understand why. He'd be very strong, although it also add a weakness to him, which is like also kind of sad. And he has a second ability. It's 1 and Phyrexian white, so 3 mana. Sacrifice 2 other artifacts and or creatures, and you can put an indestructible counter on Mondrak, Glory Dominus. All of the Phyrexian Horror mythics that are the cycle of gods, all of them have an ability that puts an indestructible counter on them. The way you pay for it is different for each one, and this one happens to be 2 other artifacts and or creatures, and it's 3 mana. Or 1 mana and 2 life and a white, or 1 mana 4 life.
Mm-hmm.
This one's just flat out strong. It's just there's nothing to say about this. It's a creature version of Anointed Procession, and Anointed Procession is a $40 card because it's used in every token deck. It's just very strong.
No, not only that. One of the things that we mentioned is, at least for standard format, the power stones, the power stones that you can make,
pay for this.
You can use them to pay for this. So we were like, me and Chris were like, yeah. So that means that in your deck, right, mono white or white black or white red, depending on what variation or what type of deck you're building, if you do create power stones, it's good because you don't have to sacrifice your creatures. You just go ahead and be like, okay, sacrifice these 2 power stones, give him the indestructible counter, and I go ahead and I keep creating stuff, because thing is that you can keep creating power stones, or if you combine Mondrak Glory of Dominus with the next card that you're going to talk about now, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. So Skrelv's Hive, 1 and a white. An enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. You have Corrupted. As long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic have lifelink. This is Mono White's version of Bitter Blossom. This is strong. This is good. For a long game, this is going to be very, very good. One of the downsides that might be a downside for some decks is that, off the top of my head, some of the decks that would actually like this would like the token that would be created not to be a colorless artifact token. Maybe just if mites were white, then they would be technically better. But that's fine. For the most part, this is just Bitter Blossom with upside. Bitter Blossom does have the upside of making the fairies have flying, and that's quite relevant, especially when you're looking for a blocker, because mites can't block. So flying blockers. So mites, you might just be like gathering the mites and attacking for as much as you can afterwards. But this is just very relevant.
Yeah.
And the last card is probably the strongest card I've talked about, even stronger than the Mycosynth Gardens and Mondrak. It's Clever Concealment. 2 white for an instant. It has Convoke. Let me read Convoke, because people get confused with Convoke. Your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 generic mana, or, the part that people forget, 1 mana of that creature's color. So if you tap a white creature, it can pay for the white cost of the spell. And the actual ability is any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. This is just like selected Teferi's Protection.
Yep.
This is very strong. This is very, very strong. One of the like interestingly and bad things about Teferi's Protection is that all your permanents phase out. So if you can't pay mana, you can't use your lands. And if someone does something while you're phased out, like while all your permanents are phased out and you didn't float mana, or it's someone else's turn and it hasn't been your turn, and you haven't come back and all your permanents are still phased out, you can't react to anything for the most part, because you can't add mana with no lands. Or your artifacts. There are ways like free spells and whatnot, but for the most part, yeah, that's it. So 4 mana Convoke, which is very, very attainable. Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out is very, very good. Like very, very good. I'm assuming this is gonna be like I saw this card at 25 pre-sale value, $25 pre-sale value. So it's like they know this card is good.
Yeah. No, this card is really good. Like, one of the things that I think that people should do, if you're a commander player, right, you should buy the 2 commander decks that are going to be part of this set. Both of them bring very, very unique cards, So at least that's what I plan on doing. Buy the commander decks and the at least 1 pre-release, and I'm a happy cookie. Because again, singles all the way. So while Chris is still on its way, I'll do my top 5. I'm gonna go ahead and move forward to my top 5, and as well ask Chris where he is. because he said that he was going to be here in 15, and it's been more than 15. Go ahead. Let's go ahead and ask him, where are you at? Then let's go ahead and go to my top 5. So my top 5 looks like this because everybody chose cards that I wanted to choose. One of the cards that I wanted to choose was the blue artifact that gives planeswalkers and 2 additional effects, the proliferate and the extra turn. Due to the fact, because if you guys have seen our Commander Knights, I play a lot of Joda, the Unifier, and most of the decks, the deck that I mostly use is my Super Friends deck. It's not CDH, it's just a fun, have a lot of planeswalkers and synergy within the game, and just have a lot of fun. So these are my top 5. Most of the couple of these cards, I really do want them for other commander decks. Let's go ahead and start with the first one. Is Tivar, Jubilant Brawler. He is 1 colorless, black, green, legendary planeswalker Tivar. It says that you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. I love this, especially because elves. Lathril, that's the first thing that I thought. Lathril. His first ability is +1, untap up to 1 target creature. And then -2, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. I do like the card for many things. The -2 gets me maybe an elf. Most of the elves right now are very cheap. The downside is that the strategy of Lathril can change a little bit in regards to that. Probably those 3 cards might be an instant or a sorcery that you need, or milled you a lot of lands. So there has to be kind of an upside, or what I thought is just use the +1, because the +1 lets you untap a creature, so that means more mana. That means that Genesis Wave or Chord's Calling or any X card can be of a bigger amount. So that's why I really do like it. I won't say that it's better than the Tivar that's already available to play. The other Tivar makes your elves mana dorks, all of them, to produce swamp. So I still like it because it's low cost. It gives haste to your abilities of your creatures. So it's really a fun card. I just like it because of those standards. The next one is Kaito, Dancing Shadows. This card, when it was released or spoiled, I really did like it. I like the fact that a lot of people were like excited because they can use their colorless drone token. So it was really funny to see that. So Kaito is 2, a colorless, blue, black, legendary planeswalker Kaito. It says whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you may return 1 of them into its owner's hand. If you do, you may activate loyalty abilities of Kaito twice this turn rather than only once. It has a +1 ability that says that up to 1 target creature can attack or block until your next turn. A 0 ability that lets you draw a card, and then a -2 ability that's create a 2/2 colorless drone artifact creature token with Death Touch, and has this ability that when this creature leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. I like it. It's really fun. I think that with this blue proliferate artifact can synergize with Kaito. You can create more bodies as well. These bodies can attack.
I hadn't actually realized, because